So we're here tonight to discuss the Common Improvement Project and also the bandstand and its handicap accessibility, and to solicit public comment from any members at large of the town. Don't seem to be here at the moment.
So I'd kind of like to just lead off because when we went to the select board on June 1st to their meeting, we had intended to participate in the conversation, but unfortunately, due to a miscommunication, that did not happen. We knew that there would be questions about the bandstand. We know that it's an icon within the town, and any changes to it would raise red flags. So I just wanted to kind of address some of the issues that came up as part of that. So if we roll back to when we originally presented this at town meeting, which was in May of 2019, we talked about the bandstand and how it was included in the project from the perspective of its needing some repair work. At the time, that repair work appeared minimal. We did also talk about, during the presentation, the fact that we understood the bandstand would likely need to be made accessible. But at the time, the town was doing a ADA self-evaluation study. They had hired consultants to complete that, and it wasn't done. In fact, we only found out about that consultant being hired after we had already done our budget. So we didn't want to leave that unaddressed at town meeting, so we made a point to make it clear that we supported the concept of making the bandstand accessible, but that we couldn't include it in the plan before them that day simply because that study wasn't done yet. But that we would look forward to working with the select board once that funding, not the funding, but once the report was complete. So fast forward to now, we finished the construction bidding. We were very fortunate in that we came out with a bid that was significantly below what we had estimated. And I will say that when we estimated the project, we made it so that we were using conservative figures. I've been involved with projects before where you go out with your estimates and you get your bids back and you find you don't have enough money. And if you don't have enough money, then you got to go back and try and get money, and then you got to go back to town meeting, and it just delays everything. So we wanted to avoid delays if possible. And so we used conservative estimates, and they appear to have been on the money because basically we had estimated about $651,000 for the project, and our bid came in just shy of $300,000. So that's just the construction piece, the $300,000. Obviously, there was a lot of engineering that had to be done in advance. So we're about at $350,000, give or take, right now with funds that will be expended with what we know about. Obviously, there are contingency funds available as well. But knowing that we are well under budget and knowing that the ADA accessibility study had been completed in the interim and that it addressed the fact that the bandstand needed to be made accessible, and given that it is such a highly visible structure within the town and so used, we felt it was appropriate to complete a change order to fold in this as part of the project. I know there was concern by the select board because they didn't have the benefit of remembering, from 2 years before what was said in that presentation, and were concerned that we hadn't talked about the accessibility piece because we had. I am under the understanding that they are supportive of this, but we haven't had a chance to talk to them again yet. So the one little wrinkle with, it's great that we have the money, we know how we want to use it, but now we have to scramble to, put together plans, make sure the town is aware of what we're trying to do, that the town has an opportunity to participate in the designs, And that's really the intent of bringing up at the select board meeting. We've had a couple of meetings of the Historic District Commission that were open to the public as well. We'll be talking about this at CPC tomorrow night. We haven't had a chance to talk to them about it because they didn't meet last month. So that's, you know, how fast things happen with it. But that's really in a nutshell where we are right now with it. We're looking to finalize designs. We have 2 designs that we've come up with the help of Neil Dixon from Dixon Salo Associates. And we'll let him talk about it in a minute. I guess that's about it. Would it be appropriate to talk about this first, or Andy, did you want to entertain any discussion about the construction that's going to be coming up, or you want to do that at the end?
We can do it whenever you like. I mean, we should probably give an overview of what's gonna happen for people that haven't been.
Yeah, maybe before we delve into the designs, we talk a little bit about that. I'll let you have the floor.
Thanks. So we did put together a one-page primer for people, and this is, we need to post this so that people can grab it electronically as well.
There's probably a bulletin board electronically. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, if there's a place to put it on a bulletin board as well, that'd be great. So generally speaking, the general scope of this project is to replace the paved sidewalks with brick. There are new metal arches at the entrances, the 4 entrances, with a historic light fixture sort of in the middle of that. If you watch Our Wilderness, you'll see the original versions of those. There are new benches that are part of this project, new site lighting as well. There is a telephone pole in the middle of the common, pole number 13, that's going to be removed, and the overhead wire that goes to it will be rerouted and or put underground. There's also there's a control panel that's right there in the middle of the common as well that's going to get relocated off to the side. So we're just going to clean up some of that stuff that happens right around the middle intersection of the common. There's also new trash cans and new plantings that are going to happen. So that's generally what's planned. What that means is there's a fair amount of trenching that needs to happen to put some wires underground and also to run new electrical for some of the site lighting. And there's also just the fact that we're taking up all the sidewalks to replace them. So as a result, for the duration of the project, for 2 months, we're going to fence off the entire common because there's just going to be so much work happening all over the place, and we're trying to really compress this time frame down into as small a window as possible. The general contractor just felt that without any sidewalks and then with trenches in all 4 quadrants of the common, it just wouldn't be a very safe place for people to be hanging out in general. So we're going to try and keep that as short of a window as possible, but I do think it's a good idea. I think it's one of those things we just have to, public safety is paramount for projects like this, especially a very public location like this. So we really have to be careful about how that works. Just in terms of the schedule, so we're planning, again, 2 months from July 1st to the end of August. The exception to that is the bandstand. If we go ahead with that work, that'll probably go a little bit beyond that, but the rest of the common will be back open again. I know parking is always a concern around the common. The general contractor has said that they'll not be taking up any parking spaces. They're going to have a construction entrance onto the common, and the few vehicles that they will have will either be there or the library parking is going to be open at the new library, so they'll be able to park some vehicles over there if needed. So no parking spaces around the common are going to be used by this project, and none will be blocked off either. So in terms of parking impact, we'll try to really keep that to an absolute 0 if we can. That's mostly it.
That's great. Any questions? Anyone? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Will the sprinklers still stay on for the grass
Will they stay on?
while all this is going on?
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to keep the sprinklers on. I think we have to see sort of once they really get into where the trenching has to happen and how often. I know they're going to be shut off for a period of time, but we have to coordinate that with.
Or just readjusted, because I know it's like, I was trying to work in my sister's yard, and it's like they kept going off on me.
Yeah, no, we don't
That
want.
makes it a little dicey sometimes, especially
Right.
if you're paying people to.
Exactly.
Right to do it.
Yep.
Right, good point. All right, so, I guess Neil, you can talk about the two designs that we have?
We've been meeting virtually with the committee for a couple of months now, I guess.
Yep.
We've been through 4 options for the bandstand as far as providing handicap accessibility to the grandstand itself. Bandstand is only about 15 inches above existing brickwork in the front of the building, so it's not, like we'll have a huge long ramp to access the floor of the bandstand. And final 2 options we came up with was this option, which is basically a sloped walkway at a slope of 1 in 20. AAB says if you have a slope of 1 in 20 or shallower, you do not need handrails, and you do not need
Turnarounds.
platforms and such. So this option is just a sloped walkway at 1 in 20, which is very shallow, and it wraps around the building almost back over to where the existing bituminous concrete walkway is. And option 2, or option D, is, excuse me, a standard handicapped ramp at a slope of 1 in 12. And as a result, we would need 2 handrails each side, one at 18 inches and one at 34 inches above the walkway surface. And that would wrap around about halfway around the bandstand and then open into the bandstand. As part of the design, the folks indicated that they would like to try and replicate the original bandstand railing, which is what is shown here. Presently, there are just 1.25 inch balusters, 4 inches on center, like you see in everyone's house and most buildings. But this is a replication of the railing that was shown on the old
Wilderness, yep.
film back in the, what was it, the 30s?
35,
35,
1930.
that's what I thought, yeah.
Mother was in it,
Was she? Wow.
she was an extra on the back of a
Oh,
pony.
I was gonna say, she on the pointy, or was your
Oh.
uncle in the wagon? Somebody was in a wagon.
My mother was 7 or 8.
Wow. So when you have the grand reopening, you'll have to have everyone dress up in the antique
Yeah,
costumes too.
recreate it, there you go.
This railing will maintain the height that's presently existing, which is about 3 feet. Where the grade is only 15 inches below the floor. This does not need to be considered by the building code as a guardrail, which would be 42 inches high and would be a little obtrusive, I would think. So we're keeping it just about where it is, and we'll replicate the details here of the diagonal balusters. Both of these options show the step, which is presently in this section, being moved over to this section, which is very close to the paved walkway that's here now. Earlier this evening, we had a discussion, and it'll be up to you folks to make a final decision, of perhaps leaving it where it is, where it seems to be more central to folks coming from either 140 or coming from by the church across the way. So, and that's the relatively minor detail, but and that would mean that the opening would be here rather than here, which is the way it is now. Plan is to, the floor is in pretty rough shape. Andy opened up the floor one morning, and we looked at it, and a lot of the timbers are rusted, rotted, and they're just resting on concrete blocks, open core concrete blocks, and they're not even solid concrete blocks. And they just seem to be randomly spaced, there's no order to them. I did a little research and come up with a system which I think will work. We've used it in Millbury, when we did the addition and the ramp for their bandstand, and it worked out quite well, and then avoids having to dig footings and all that. By code, we don't need a full 4-foot deep footing because the whole structure is only about 300 square feet, and anything at less than 600 square feet doesn't require a full-blown 4-foot deep footing with 4-foot deep foundation wall with footings and all that. So the plan is to replace the framing under the floor, replace the decking with new decking, and the thought is to use a composite type material in an appropriate color. Right now, the deck is a dark green. I'm sure we can find one that's very close to it. And that's much more permanent than having even a pressure-treated wood deck, which in a few years you'll be staining again. So little repair work up in the roof structure. And the plan is to paint everything. These posts, some of the posts are suspect, and we may need to replace those. But they're not a ornate post, so I don't see it as a large expense. You know, if it were a turned post with designs in it, then it might be, but where it's just basically a rectangular post, we should be okay. We're also planning to add some lighting on the interior of the bandstand. Right now, I'm not sure, I think there's a
It's
Beer
scary
light
what's there
bulb
right
standing,
now.
Yeah.
hanging there on a suspect wire.
It's like a power strip hanging up there.
Yeah,
Increase
exactly.
the electrical a little bit, more outlets.
And maybe one thing we might consider when we have electrical engineer do is lighting, is make some provisions for perhaps some Christmas lighting around the perimeter in the overhang. Maybe just provide outlets so that when the season comes, you could add some decorative lighting there. Another thing that we'll talk about that we haven't, because we just sort of finalized the design, is the consensus seems to be that this sloped walkway is much more desirable than this ramp with the handrails and everything. But I think we probably should provide some lighting along the walkway as part of the project. Just something that's appropriate, not very visible, but still gives some lighting.
Something along the ground you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hadn't
Gonna
talked about that.
Provide outlets around the top for lighting.
That's
Is
what
it a good idea to also provide some kind of fasteners so that as soon as this is put up, they're not nailing who knows what all over the place? I mean, I don't know what a generic kind of fastener
Yeah,
would be
I'm
that
not-
would work, but
I think that's a good suggestion.
don't
I'm
wanna
not
have-
sure what the solution is.
We'd have to look into it.
I'm sure we can come up with something. There are grommets and there are devices that electricians use all the time, so.
Yeah.
And that's good. We don't want people hammering holes in the.
let's get a little normal wear and tear before we start.
So Neil, can you talk a little bit about the other two options that we looked at and touch on why we've kind of eliminated those?
Okay. First option we looked at was just starting with a ramp and going up. These legs on the bandstand are about 7 feet long each. So we were thinking about going up and then turning a 45-degree angle and then continuing on up. But problem is, in doing that, I checked the AAB code, and then I actually called the executive director of the Architectural Access Board and asked him the question, because the code says that at every change in angle on a ramp, you need a 5-foot by 5-foot platform. And so I asked him, I said, we're not turning a 90-degree turn, we're turning 45. He said, you still need a 5 by 5 ramp, so which means that we would have come up in 7 feet, we would have come up 7 inches. And then we would have had a 5-foot platform and then 7 more inches. And we would have ended up way around the building again, because we would have taken 5 feet out of this next 7 feet, which means we would only have 2 feet left to build a ramp, and then we need another platform, so it was.
Right, because the platforms have to be level as opposed to
Yes.
the ramp, right? Yeah.
Right, the level is, by definition in the code, is 2%, which is
Right.
like 1 inch and 50 feet, so effectively level, but you have a little slope to it just so water will run off the surface when it rains.
Right. And so the two designs that we had that featured that ramp wrapping around, the only difference between them is where the ramp started. Because
we had-
where it started predicted where it would end, right? But
Exactly.
then once we found out about those 5-foot turnarounds, you couldn't really move it, because then you'd be
Right.
in the other walkway.
The first two options were, the second option was to start the ramp here rather than here, and, but those two options really don't work, so we just discarded them. And then it led to the sloped walkway, and then just to show what a standard ramp would look like, we did this presentation also.
Yeah, and just so the people in the audience know, the reason we feel the one on the left, which is, I believe we call it C, example C, because the first two were A and B that we deleted. We feel that is aesthetically less impactful to the look and feel of the structure, because you don't have the handrails there. Once you go to that 1 in 12 slope, you have to have the handrails. And that just really is impactful
Just
to how it looks.
inconsistent with the whole bandstand design.
Right. So the C allows you to provide the access while still having the look and feel of
And
bandstand as we know it.
we can add considerable shrubbery and
Yeah.
plantings around the ramp, even this option to conceal it, quite a bit, in Shrewsbury, if anyone's familiar with their gazebo, they planted some really good-sized shrubs to conceal it, because they have a ramp like this.
Yeah, to hide the
And
house,
all along this side, you can hardly see it if you're standing on the
Yeah.
other side.
unless you're going up it. And I know you've shown taller ones here, but we don't necessarily have to do those either. We could have mulch and lower shrubs, just to differentiate
Yeah,
the
that's-
sloped area, on either side, the gradual sloped area.
The only, probably be a combination of deciduous and evergreens, because you would want enough evergreens to sort of shield it year-round, rather than just in the summer.
Yeah, good point.
And we don't want those to be too tall, because then you won't be able to see much of the.
No, you want them to see the bandstand,
Yeah,
right?
So that
I'm
detail
thinking,
will need to be
3
looked
feet
at.
high, and something that probably would be a little lower than the rail on the
Yeah.
bandstand. And then, I don't know, like we did at the Grafton Townhouse, we had Bill Yeomans, who did a lot with the landscaping, but he had some shrubs, but he also had some flowering plants, that really gave it some life during the summer, so maybe the garden club could take on that as a project or something like that.
excellent. Any questions of anyone?
You said the posts are just square, they're not beveled at all?
I
Hmm?
The
don't think,
posts around the perimeter?
I don't think they're beveled.
I mean,
They're square, they come up and they
They have a little bit.
slope
Not
in
that
a
big.
little and then come up again, but they're not
right,
turned, you
right,
know, like a
right.
round post. And from every other photos we saw, that's how they were originally, it's not like they've been added.
It's nice to see the original configuration of the
I like
guardrails.
that, it looks sharp.
Yeah, I was pleased with the way the renderings came out and how the renderer added the musicians in the stand. The little boy with a horn sitting on the step.
Yeah, it's amazing what they can do.
Yeah.
One thing that we haven't talked about before, other than just before the meeting, when we were just sitting around, the inside right now is painted white, the ceiling. A lot of porches and whatnot from that era and even today are painted like a light blue color. And Andy just told me, and I didn't know this, that's because bees don't recognize it as a ceiling, they think it's the sky, because it's painted light blue, so they don't actually try to build their nests there. So that's a good perk of that design.
Now, this ceiling is, the rafters are exposed and then the roof boards are above that, so you have the rafters, which are painted white. I'm not sure what the color the actual decking is painted, do you know, Andy?
It's white,
White,
it's white, except for
it just-
one is not
it's
painted
just-
at all.
It's just in shadow, so it doesn't show up, but.
And it's open right up into the cupola, that would
Yeah,
really look
well, it
kinda
comes up
cool.
to like a 3.5 foot octagonal, and then the cupola comes up in the middle.
Yeah, just something to think about.
I just did a addition to a home, and part of it was a porch addition. We replicated a porch she had, and she did the same thing. She painted the boards on the ceiling light blue.
Yeah, it looks nice. All right, thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil.
Okay. Do you want me to leave these, Paul?
Yeah, you can leave those.
Okay, I'll leave everything here.
Thank you very much.
And additional photos, do you want any of the 8.5 by 11s of that?
You've printed some out?
I have some, so.
Yeah, if you don't mind leaving those too,
Yeah,
that'd be great,
just in
thank
case
you.
we need it.
And we'll be in touch once we figure out where we're headed. So, I guess we can probably close the hearing.
See if that woman does have any questions. I don't think she did.
I just did, she said no.
You?
You don't know, that's one of our select people right there,
This,
that's Colleen Rowe.
Oh,
Now
there
you
are
do.
6 options of each, 6 copies of each option, so, what would you wish?
Thank you so much, Neil,
Thank you.
appreciate your help,
Great job.
and your scrambling to get it done for us, thank you.
I said contacted the, I think it was a Friday you called me?
Yeah,
We met
Thursday,
Thursday night.
actually.
And I called the renderer, and he was away with his wife for a couple of days, so he got back to me Saturday and apologized to me. And I said, the challenge is, they need it by the 23rd, and
If you have 2
he
days
said, I'll
left.
get to work on it now, so he worked all weekend, so.
Thank him for us, that was very appreciated, appreciated.
Came out really well.
Yes. All right. Close the hearing now?
Okay, so,
Motion.
we're gonna, request a motion to close the hearing.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Stevens, aye.
So, motion's, the hearing's closed at
7:35. All right, wanna call our regular meeting to order?
Okay, so we'll start up our new special meeting.
And we'll call
Make
it.
a motion to begin at 7:37,
So
June
moved.
23rd. Gonna make a motion
So moved.
I don't know if we need a motion to open, but,
You just call it to order.
That's right.
All right, so, I just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about, the designs and, you know, if, I figured we were here, we should take advantage of the opportunity. We will be meeting, as I said before, with CPC tomorrow night. As the project rep, I will, be discussing it. They, have a point in the meeting where they ask for updates on all the projects. And so I will share this with them, to make sure that they are aware of, where we're at with it. I did send a letter to the select board, addressing the concerns that they had raised at their June 1st meeting, and I copied, the chair of the CPC, so I assume that will be, dispersed in advance to people, when they have a chance to see that.
I can send it, cause if Joanne,
Yeah, I
I don't know what,
didn't see any packet. Normally, she sends a packet out with the agenda. It'll be good just for people to be able to see it and review it. At any rate, I will plan to go over it. And, you know, we want to make sure that they're on board with using the funding towards the accessibility piece. And after that, our next step will be, well, we obviously need to finalize the design that we want to put forth. And then we will need to go to the select board with the change order and discuss it and get their approval to move forward. So Andy, I don't know about timeline for putting together the actual change order. And I know that we also, above and beyond the accessibility issue, there's that, was it a diffuser? What did they call the backflow preventer? What is the?
Oh, for the water department?
Right,
Yeah, separate issue I get, but
Right.
have we talked to the water department about that? Is that something that we need to fold in? Are they gonna do the work? How is it?
They don't do the work. I had a brief exchange with them and need to do a little bit more work on my side of things. I talked to Paul Canoyer as well, so he's gonna help me out to get that sort of resolved and figured out.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we can't really do a change order until we have a solid price from the GC. So I was gonna do a quick estimate, so we had sort of an idea where that was headed, but then I also wanna talk to JM Corporation and have them do a real takeoff and a real proposal, so that we have a firm number to turn into an actual change order.
right. So that essentially would be the same for both the backflow preventer and the bandstand.
Right.
The same approach, right?
Yep, exactly, yeah, we'll keep them separate, but we'll have both of those quantified.
So, assuming we finalize our design within the next week or so, how long does that take for them to do all that work? Any rough idea?
Usually it takes a couple of weeks. I'm gonna talk to them and see how compressed we can. The bandstand piece of this is really pretty straightforward. I mean, a lot of it is, it's lumber, it's paint, it's whatever. It's not really terribly complicated, and it's not huge also. So to have somebody do a takeoff of that and do an estimate, shouldn't really take much more than a week. Depends on how busy they are and what else they have going on, but it's not a big lift.
Do they feel that they can do the backflow preventer that work sometime during July and August?
So we haven't actually talked to them about that specific scope. It sounds like it's a pretty straightforward plumbing operation. So I haven't,
Could be very big.
right. So we'll,
did they have a deadline or a timeline for us to get it completed?
the water
It
department,
should already be done.
it should have already been done, right, yeah. Yeah,
Last year.
it sort of slipped through the cracks.
Since
And
we just found out about it, and if they said, okay, you still have 6 months, or we really want it done by September.
no, they just said they'd like it to be done as part of this
Oh,
project,
okay.
so.
So they know we're working on it, it's not like
Oh, yeah,
we're
no,
gonna
they,
turn off our sprinklers.
right, yeah, no, they're well aware that we're working on it, yep.
So, if I'm correct, the select board, and Colleen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they meet in July on the 6th and the 20th, that would be their regular meetings?
I think there might be one more. We've been kind of hitting 3 a month.
Okay.
lately. But the 6th for sure is our next meeting.
I don't know if we would be ready by that point, that would be the earliest I would think we possibly could.
Yeah, that sounds,
That sounds,
maybe not achievable, but let me, I can
Right
talk
after
to,
the holiday and.
yeah, I can talk to PJ tomorrow, Jam, and find out what their timeline looks like, but we'll be able to get it moved right along, I think.
So I can reach out, oh,
Do
sorry,
you
go ahead.
wanna just be put on the agenda so that you have a spaceholder if you do hit that goal, and then we can always pass over it if you don't?
Yeah, and if not, if we can't, then to move it to the next meeting that we
Right.
have, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great if you could do that, thank you.
Yeah, July 6th feels like the day after tomorrow, but I think,
Yeah.
but I think you're right, better to have a placeholder and then move it if we need to,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and I'm actually away next week, so I won't be around. All right, so why don't we talk about the design then, so maybe we can try and finalize the direction we think we wanna go in. What do, since we have you two here and you haven't, really seen the designs before, what are your perspectives on the two that you have shown here?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's, I feel like I need to get a little closer.
The brick won't be, is like the colors and all that they're showing there,
The brick will be
it's
the
just,
same color everywhere, and so right now the opening is here, and it may still be here. They were just talking about, we asked them to maybe turn it this way so it's closer to the center, but now everybody's kind of thinking maybe it's better to have it back where it was.
more symmetrical.
So this wraps around and is the opening behind this guy?
Yes.
Which
Yep.
means it's just like one awkward closed part?
So there's two
Yeah.
openings,
Okay.
basically.
So there'd be like 3 openings that aren't covered by like shrubbery. And if we move the entrance over
Here.
to there, then you'd have one section on either side. And the opening in the middle, it just seems more symmetrical.
I like that symmetrical idea, yeah.
So just two openings,
Right,
okay.
yep.
This
One
might
for
help you a
stairs
little
and
bit. So the one on the left is this one here, and you can see it comes in that section there. It could be, this panel here, and then this one with a straight ramp over there, they're gonna be coming in.
You can kind of see the opening through the slats if you look.
Yeah, I'm looking down at the bottom here to see
There's
where
like a
it's-
landing, at
Here's a
just,
bigger-
just where it turns, there's a landing, a 5-foot landing, and that's where the opening is.
Gotcha.
That's sort of a bigger version, so you have the opening with the stair here, and then you have 2 panels and an opening there.
Did you say that another town did the same thing?
Other towns have done similar versions of this.
Similar, yeah.
Most of them, actually, they have a harder time than we do because they're on the
Higher.
floor, the bandstand is much higher.
Uh-huh.
So the higher you go, the longer you have to go too,
Yes,
so.
yes.
We actually stole the idea from Hopkinton. They
Yeah.
said, are you from Hopkinton?
Up and up with it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and their gazebo is actually much bigger in
Yeah.
diameter as well, but, and it's much, much higher. Very familiar with that.
My uncle tore down, yeah, and he saved all the old slats, so did a bunch of projects.
They have a performance hall, kind of like, it's not physically like it, but similar to Apple Trees with the, they've got an old barn that they converted. Remember,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, the
Yep.
Hopkinton Center for the Performing Arts, is I
Yep.
think it's called, yeah.
that's up by the high school there.
Yeah.
Their gazebo also had Bose donate like a speaker system all incorporated in it, so
Oh,
we
wow.
can do a big, events and things
Wow.
like that. So I
Not
don't
in
know
our
if we know anybody in town that has a connection that wants to donate anything, but now's the time.
And It's amazing what they can do with small speakers now, too.
Oh, I know,
Mhm.
yeah. Remember the day when we had stereos with huge massive speakers and tuners?
I just gave some away to a
Yeah,
church.
So this will be good.
Your room looks empty now.
To get this up so it's structurally sound again and it's all cleaned up, and to restore the balusters so they're like they were in the original, I think will be really important. We're gonna make all the outlets that are out there, make those all safe and up to code and up to present day, so. And the lighting piece of this is big too, and that was a really good suggestion to have some permanent hangers, so we can
Yes.
hang Christmas
Yeah.
lights.
I agree, I
Yep, so
agree.
will all the outlets be in the top?
There are outlets right now that are on the posts, on the inside of these posts.
But they're down lower.
They're down lower, yeah.
Yeah, it probably would make sense to have at least a couple up here, maybe inside here,
Yep.
inside there, maybe 3.
And, yeah, and the lighting just upgrading the lighting too will be nice, just to have something that's subtle but safe and, not the hanging single light.
An
that we have.
LED.
Is it just one light you're putting in the middle, or you?
I don't think we've really talked about.
We're still
lighting,
working on the
so I-
details, but it'll be
we obviously-
LED.
We don't want it to, you know,
Yeah.
to be this
Were
big
you
beacon in the
involved
middle.
with the group from Rhode Island that did the church, the Congo church,
Yeah.
the fiber optics?
Yep.
Is that just like incredibly expensive?
I don't think it's necessary now, so in the library, all the LED technology that's in there now, the LEDs they're super thin
It just
profile,
is good.
they draw no power, the light is really nice, you can dim it if you want to, so I would recommend that we look at some of the LED fixtures that
Is
are
that just a simpler?
just a simpler,
installation?
right, yeah.
Is it expensive to replace a bulb? Because I had that issue.
Not
No?
really anymore, no,
Okay.
they're so prevalent now, and they last a lot longer too, so just in terms of the long-term maintenance, they're
Cheaper to
And
run.
the lights that
That's
he
really what
mentioned, I didn't ask, but would they be like, you see them in bricks, kind of in the ground? Are they gonna be on the bandstand shining down
oh, for the ramp?
for the ramp?
Good question, I don't know, I mean, I kinda like the ones that are low, that only,
Low, that's what I was
they only
thinking.
light up the path that you're on and
Right.
don't,
So like under this.
there could be something like that,
Something
there could be,
along
there's a
line.
lip right there, so you could do a strip that goes in, that follows way around that, and that would be more than enough light to
Oh,
be
you
able
don't
to
have
have
to do
that.
both sides, just
No,
one?
no, cause it'll
Just
shadow
along
right
the
across
Oh,
that,
nice.
it's only 5 feet wide, so that'll actually be, it'd be a nice little thing, and those can be put on timers so that they automatically shut on and off, or they can just be put on daylight sensors, so and then with a timer, so they're on for a few hours at night and then shut off in the middle of the night. So there's some things we could do with that are relatively simple, but would make it, you wouldn't really see the light fixtures themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
So as far as were you talking about the floor and the posts, so you don't think that's a big deal as far as the cost?
No, that's all straight, it's all pretty standard kind of lumber stuff, yeah, not really a big deal. And even just supporting, the top part of the bandstand while we remove the bottom part,
Yeah.
it's done all the time, it's not really that difficult of a feat, so no, I'm not too worried about the mechanics of fixing this or not, really big.
When you guys were discussing the brick sidewalk, the historical accuracy of using brick was extremely important. How about using composite versus, wood? Is that the same level of import? Obviously, composite's gonna last a lot longer, but I know historical accuracy was really important, so where does that kinda?
So there's no preservation restriction on the common, so we're not obligated, like we are at the townhouse. You had to follow the Secretary of the Interior's designs, which wouldn't allow anything but real wood. The fact of the matter is, AZAC, when it's painted, you can't tell the difference between it and wood,
So-
and it's so much more durable. So that was a decision we felt was appropriate to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Mass Historical will say if we asked for an opinion, but I do know at national park sites, they're the mother of the Secretary of Interior Standards. If, I was in Salem, I believe, and they have multiple properties there, and all the walkways, the ramps, are all AZAC. It's not wood anymore, because it's a price killer, and it's a maintenance issue.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I think that's what part of preservation is, and I think that's what we say and repeat. We're not putting a dome over the common, and we're not preserving it, freezing it in time. It's gotta adapt towards things that are current, but you also wanna preserve the character of what is there. And if we can preserve the floor by using AZAC, that's a legitimate compromise to preserve the whole thing. Because if we didn't and it rots, it could have rotted and just literally collapsed on us, and things, you hear about buildings in Boston all the time, the whole wall just collapses and there's no warning, so.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly a good issue to raise, but it's a compromise.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
For longevity.
We actually wanted to put AZAC and the dormers in the downhouse when we were doing that project, just because we know getting maintenance done in the town is not easy. So we proposed that to the Mass Historical Commission, but they nixed it. they wanted real wood, so that's what we got.
Gotcha.
Looks great.
Very cool.
We've been working on it for a long time, so we're really happy that we're right on the verge of this guy.
So it appears from your focus that you guys are of the same opinion we are, that the rendering on the left is the direction that you prefer? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
With the more centered opening.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what John Morgan in his email to me said also. He prefers C with it opening where it was.
oh, he changed his mind.
Yep.
Okay. What do you guys think about painting the interior of the ceiling blue, like a light blue?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, it's different than what we had, but considering what it prevents, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Typically, you don't even see it unless you.
Unless you're in it,
Right,
unless you're in it,
Right.
yeah. I had never looked at the
And
ceiling.
that's another
until the other day.
maintenance thing from, 100 years ago, that people, because it's easier just to paint white, that just kinda got forgotten over time.
Right,
Who knows?
so it might have been blue before too. You wouldn't have known from a black and white film anyway. Right.
I think it looks better too with blue.
Oh, yeah, it does. I agree. All right. So it looks like C it is that we will propose.
With the opening where it was before.
Right, so centered, the ceiling blue and the lighting, and we'll need lighting for the walkway too. I like the idea of it going around the edge of the floor of the bandstand. I think that could work nicely.
I like the idea of having perhaps 3 outlets high up
Yeah.
inside the stand.
The one thing I'm not sure I like is the height of the shrubs. I think you could accomplish.
A bit lower, I think.
The whole idea is to draw attention to the fact that there's a slight slope there. So if you were to even just mulch and have lower plantings along there, I think you'd accomplish the same thing, and then it wouldn't obstruct the view of the bandstand from the backside.
My guess is that the artist that did the rendering did them big. I mean, you're not gonna buy bushes that they would cost you an arm and a leg, and they may not survive. Just like the trees, they said, past a certain caliper, you're risking
Yeah.
Yeah,
their survival over year number 1. So, as long as the Parks Department, Recreation, whoever cemeteries mows and does the hedge clipping, just to say this is where we wanna keep it, or that we just keep an eye on it, we would dictate. It's just like, or you would buy plantings that would be dwarf, that would only
yeah,
grow.
there's plenty of those
2
out there.
feet
That's-
tall.
That would be the easier thing, then you don't have to worry about the hedge clipping. So we can work out that detail. Anything that we're missing on the design, Andy, that you can think of?
But I also think it serves as a nice backdrop, because typically, anything I've ever attended on the band, using the bandstand, it's facing out, like that's the back of the stage, and the opening is the front of the stage.
Yep.
That there's nothing really behind it, or there are tables where people eat,
Yep.
or there's, equipment, or it's not, so it's almost like a shield, so if you had stuff you didn't want people to see,
Yeah.
it's kinda hidden behind all
Yep.
the bushes.
All right.
You know what I was just thinking?
No, no.
When you mentioned the LED lighting, would it be nice to have the LED lighting sort of go on the inside perimeter of it instead of just like a 1 or 2 lights?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we haven't had the electrical engineer look at lighting on the inside of that, but I think that's certainly one of the options we could do.
Look nice at night, just rather than having a light shining on it from outside, having it lit up
Yeah,
from inside.
Yeah, I agree.
Would look really cool. And remember, there's gonna be new lamp posts on the common, so there's gonna be, well, at each entranceway, we're bringing back the original archways that were there, so there's metal archways that come out the kind of shape of a spade, and where the point is, there's a coach lantern. So each of the entrances will have that for lighting, and then in addition to that, there are 6 other lamp posts, period appropriate lamp posts that are going in with the same lantern.
And just, that reminds me that I think we may have had this conversation last year or a long time ago about the color of the lights in those all 10 lamps. We hope that it won't be too bright or white, that it'll be more of a,
We'll use the soft lighting. That's
Yes.
available now in LED. You
Yeah.
can pick
Yep,
either the
this
bright.
change is not just a blinding white.
No, you don't want the
yeah,
white
as
light.
soft as possible, I
For
think.
LED.
Yeah, they have that option.
I've gone through my house and replaced lamps, I think 3 times now, because they come out with a soft light, and then a few years later, it's even softer, which is even
Yeah.
better, a little bit yellower, so.
And I guess another thing that's worth mentioning, so folks are aware, so, we had one, slight oversight in our plans that we, I was talking with Roger Trahan, actually, and he brought it to my attention. So, today, if you go up to the common, there are no accessible, benches at all. There are none situated along the walkways. They're all, dispersed throughout the common along the grass. So, our plan is to create 4 new accessible, benches along the walkways, but we have proposed 8 other benches, similar locations to where they are now, which requires us to get a variance from the Architectural Access Board. So we are in the process of drawing up our request for that variance, and we'll be sending that in to the AAB for their consideration.
So is the requirement that all benches have to be fully accessible?
Normally, yes, but, the reasons that you can request a variance is if the cost is, just out of control, that
Right.
you can't afford
Because
to
you
do
have to
it.
make a path on the exterior to get to
Right,
them.
we'd have to create additional pathways that don't exist now in order to accomplish that, which would increase the cost sufficiently. It would also take away from the character of the common, as it exists today. In addition to that, it would create more potential harm to the trees, which is another concern that we've been, we've hired an arborist who's gonna be helping us with the project. When we do the excavation, we're not just digging them out, we're gonna be using a technique called air spading, where they actually blow air in to prune the roots rather than just yanking them out. So the arborist will be on site for that work. They've been contracted for it.
Are there special benches that are designed to be handicap accessible? Or it's the fact that there's a cement pad or
Yeah.
a brick pad that you could get a wheelchair and then you just slide over onto a open-ended, not a, with the railing on the end?
The benches we have could be made accessible if we had the walkway to get to them. That's really the only issue. They all are going to be placed on pads, even the ones that aren't on the walkway. You wouldn't need a special bench per se, but the big issue is that you can't get to the ones that are in the grass if you have accessibility issues without going over the lawn, and that's not within their
But
guidelines.
did Roger say that before that we have planned for the walkways,
Yeah.
that those are?
I shared with him the plans, and those are fine. We know that those are accessible.
Was he
We purposely
okay
put them there.
that we do a filing with the Architectural Access Board?
He just wanted to make sure that we are aware of it, because it's harder after the fact. It might be harder to get a variance than to ask for a variance up front. So we'll see what the Architectural Access Board says. And like I said, today, we have no accessible benches. The plans will create 4 of them along the walkways. I don't think there's anything else. I think that was pretty much it. Any other questions from folks here? I know we have some folks here that weren't here earlier. If you want to come up and see the designs, feel free to come up and take a look. We have 2 that we are proposing here tonight. We had 4 originally, but 2 were ruled out after talking with the Architectural Access Board.
Paul,
Yes.
I just wanted to know, how many trees are you cutting down on the common?
So
We're waiting for the cars to stop knocking them down.
Yeah. So far, we haven't because of this project, we haven't taken out any trees so far. We've lost 7 trees up there now. And I say it's not because of the project, but because of the project, we did hire an arborist. And the arborist did do an evaluation and found a number of the trees were diseased and potentially were dangerous. So we had to remove some. There were other trees that came down of their own volition. We had a large tree behind the gazebo that was tethered to a power line and the poles by the library. And I guess over time, that was too much stress for it. So it came down, and then it took down the conifer that was up there that we used for Grafton Celebrates the Holidays. So we lost those, and then most recently, we had I believe it was a DUI, but somebody had an accident, and they took out a couple sections of the fencing, and they took out a beautiful cherry tree that was up there that was pretty good size. So, based on the plans we have and working with the arborist, we are hopeful that there will be no additional trees that will have to be taken down.
That sounds good. Is there any change in the fencing around? That's all the same.
That's staying the same, although that driver took out and broke a couple of the posts, at least one of them, so they have to
Yeah,
have
I
a new
think they're
one.
gonna be replacing, what is it, 5 or,
Yeah,
yeah.
5,
And what is the name? That's something pink is the name
It's
of it.
Milford.
Milford Pink is
granite.
the name of the granite that we use.
And they're gonna go around as part of the painting of them and get all the paint off, all the granite posts, because over time, they hire high school kids or volunteers, and there's paint all on the posts, so that this will be part of the project to
Clean them up.
remove all that paint. So everything.
When you're serving with those sections were rotted and they just fell
And,
apart.
and if they're, the beams that need to be replaced, those will be replaced at the same.
We included that in the budget, repair work around there. Also, we wanted to add access for, in case there's a tree in the future that needs to come down, and what, access for the larger trucks. So we're gonna have actually a couple of those sections be able to be lifted up so that they can get a truck in there.
And that work won't be done until probably September, after they're gonna wait till after this project is complete, and then that'll probably happen in September.
I'm sorry I wasn't here for the beginning. When are you initially starting the work?
July 1st,
July 1st, and it should be ending.
hopefully the end of August.
That doesn't factor in the
Right.
bandstand, so, and that may add a little bit on the end to the project. We'll get a better idea once we've really spoken with the contractor about it. So we still have to get estimates and whatnot from them.
Andy, for the removable posts, are they just gonna replace the little ties with just kind of a U-shaped thing where they just slide in? Or have they been discussed?
I don't think they've looked at that really carefully yet, John. I think they have to, I think they wanna look at the hardware that exists now and just
Mhm.
figure out what's the best way to do that.
So I think those are just bolted on.
I think they are.
Those archways, are they still gonna swing open in some areas too, or is that no longer part of the design?
No, that was just one thing that we speculated we might be able to do when we were determining how to get that kind of access. We went with this route. It wasn't feasible to do that. They are gonna be wide enough spaced and high enough that a typical size pickup truck would be able to drive through it.
But if like a fire truck, an ambulance needed to get on, that's another reason why, if we have a big event on the common, to be able to just pop those beams out, they can just drive through, because they couldn't get through right now, between the posts. Those are too narrow if you needed to get, emergency vehicle in there, so.
Pretty much for, payloader or tree truck, something like that. In the case of an ambulance, you can just transport the patient on the gurney. Yeah, on the gurney, it's not that great a distance.
Yeah, it's-
And same with the, fire apparatus, you just run the hose in from the street.
Andy, do you wanna just run over the construction details again, since they didn't hear it, just briefly? I know it only takes a minute.
He'd love to.
There's some handouts that
I'd love
he
to,
can
actually,
bring
yeah.
up.
Just rewind the tape.
I'll do it one better. I'll make sure everybody gets a hand. I think you've seen this before, but let's just make sure.
Last time it was in the rain.
So, right, our handout has the general scope. So I think, again, replacing the currently paved sidewalks with brick. Paul already described the new metal arches at the 4 entrances with the historic light fixture, the coach lantern that's in the middle of that. We have new benches, new site lighting, new light poles. There's a telephone pole in the middle of the common, as well as a control box that's right there at the intersection, that is gonna get, the telephone pole's gonna go away, the overhead wires get relocated, the control box gets moved to the eastern side of the common, off to one side, so it's not right there in the middle. So no overhead wires anymore, new trash cans, new planting, and again, talked about cleaning up the extra paint on the granite posts. And then we've been discussing, repairing the bandstand. That's structurally right now, from the waist down, it's not doing so well. The floor structure's not good, the flooring itself is not good. The structure above that is fine. The trim that's around the outside, that's right against the ground, of course, is rotted. Anytime you've got wood that is touching the ground or is partially buried in mulch, it just doesn't last very long. So all that needs to get replaced. So yeah, our schedule is to start July 1st and go for 2 months. I talked earlier that because of the extent of removing the sidewalks where people would normally walk, and B, the amount of trenching that needs to happen to make sure all the power that's going to the new site lights, as well as some of the other existing stuff, goes underground. The general contractor just felt like between those two things, no sidewalks plus a bunch of trenching, he wants to fence off the entire common. Again, we're saying it's for the whole 2 months. If he can do it in less time than that, he'll reopen some of the commons, so that, because I go by there every single day. I'm right across the street at the library. I see how much it gets used. Our contractor is originally from Grafton. He's well aware of the popularity and the use of the common as well. So they understand what they're working with. But just the same, for public safety, they felt it was best to just fence off the whole thing for the beginning and to get this really rolling. I know the other big concern was parking spaces around the common. It's always a concern. So no parking spaces are going to be taken up by the construction team. They're going to have a construction entrance onto the common, so the few vehicles that they'll have will be parked either on the common, or at that point, by the time they start, we'll be able to use the library parking lot if they've got vehicles that need to be parked somewhere else. So that'll be right across the street if they need to park there. But they've committed to no use of any parking spaces around the common.
Look like it.
Will the parking construction vehicles at the library interfere with the library's opening?
No, and I'm not saying there are gonna be construction vehicles at the library, but there are 83 parking spaces, new, parking spaces at the library, where there were 23 before. So I think we're gonna be okay. And looking at the library's opening schedule to the public isn't until probably the middle of August, so I think we're gonna be okay.
Otherwise, they could use the old DPW lot.
They could do that as well, right, yep.
Can I
That's-
ask one other question?
Sure.
Is there, I can see here on the plan, there's the bench, and then right next to it is like a wheelchair position, so
Right.
it's like an extra pad for
Mhm.
them. Is there a way to, I'm thinking that if you're in a wheelchair and you want to go see something at the gazebo, is there a space there that, like a wheelchair pad near the gazebo?
Well, because the bandstand's gonna be, I mean, we're making it, we're adding the ramp, so they can go right onto the bandstand if they want to.
Well, I mean, if I was in a wheelchair and I wanted to go see a concert, I would only be able to either park on the sidewalk or go down to where one of the benches are and stay there. I was just thinking if you.
Yeah. totally get you. There's a bricked area that you can kind of see it in this one, that's right in front, that they'd be able to use as well. Yeah. The existing brick that's there, that's gonna be taken out, but having brick in that area will still be there, yeah.
When you do over the bandstand area, the roofing was all done
Yes.
not too long ago by the Lions. Is that going to be all destroyed, or?
No, it's gonna stay.
Okay.
The only thing that needs to happen up higher,
Mhm.
is we wanna do some new lighting that's inside the bandstand, and right now, because there's just a bare bulb
Right.
sort of doing this. And there's a plug strip that's hanging in the air, so we wanna make it safe electrically. So we're gonna upgrade some of the electrical, the outlets in there. A couple of comments recently just about making sure we've got a couple of outlets up high if we're gonna have Christmas lighting. To be able to plug in the lights up there, and also maybe look at having some kind of permanent hangers that, so if somebody's gonna put lights on the outside of the bandstand, we don't have to be nailing or screwing or stapling lights to it all the time. We could just have permanent, hangers, so that you could just hang lights and then take them off when you needed to. So I think both of those are gonna be under consideration. But no, we took a good look. I went up on a ladder, the architect went up on a ladder with me, separately, to take a look at the roof and just the trim and everything up there to make sure,
Yep.
just to get a good look at what kind of shape it was in.
That's
But
good.
no, it's gonna stay.
Another fun fact we learned is that they might paint it light blue.
Because bees don't realize that it's not the sky, so
The-
it helps with bee maintenance.
The underside of the
inside.
inside of the ceiling in there, yeah.
Because they do on a lot of porches.
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. It's a great fun fact.
Any other questions?
All right.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for coming.
yeah, thank you very much for coming. I think we're all set with our special meeting, don't you agree?
Yeah, we just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Stevens, aye.
Aye.
Shalay Pack, aye.
Scarlett, aye.
Nicholson, aye. Declare the motion closed at, or the
8:13.
meeting closed at 8:13, yeah.
All right.